Just before Thanksgiving, my grandfather called. That $400,000 loan was finally settled. The weight I'd carried for years seemed to lift, though a tiny thread of disbelief lingered. Not long after, my phone buzzed again. It was Elena. A single, sharp text. Family reunion at the manor. Why now? After 3 years of silence, she wanted to reach out just as I was finally free of debt. The words collided with my relief, twisting it into something uneasy. I had no idea that this year's turkey dinner would turn into a proving ground, a crucible where a sealed letter and a hidden trust condition would set the stage for revelations I wasn't prepared for. I am Ava Morgan. For the first time in nearly 10 years, I could breathe without feeling the sting of interest, deadlines, or mounting bills. The drive to Juniper Valley, Idaho, a 4-hour stretch of winding roads and pine-scented air, was meant to be a victory lap, a personal release. My old, dependable sedan hummed beneath me, the faint glow of the check engine light a reminder of all the years I'd clawed my way through work, exhaustion, and financial stress. Symbolic, almost. The last link to a life I was leaving behind. I'd leased a small cabin, sight unseen, using my first paycheck after freedom. This wasn't just a rental. It was a sanctuary, a decompression chamber, a place to finally sleep more than 5 hours a night, a place where the knots in my nervous system, tied tight by $400,000 in debt, might finally loosen. The gravel crunched under my tires as I drove up the long driveway. Pines crowded the horizon, the air sharp with cedar and frost. It should have been peaceful. It should have been perfect. But something was wrong. The front door of my cabin, my sanctuary, was open, just a crack, but enough. My pulse spiked. I cut the engine. The air hit me with the wrong kind of sharpness. Industrial primer and fresh paint, latex. My stomach tightened, gut lurching. I stepped out. My boxes, movers, carefully hoisted treasures, books, kitchen supplies, my grandmother's armchair, all gone. The walls, previously warm pine, were now blinding, sterile white. A cheap, flat-packed dining table dominated the living room, a piece of lilac-colored stationery sitting atop it. I knew the handwriting, Cassid's, my sister. The letter was not a plan. It was a decree. Appetizers, arrival times, assigned tasks, all culminating at Whitmore Lodge, our grandfather's estate. My stomach twisted. In the kitchen, a high chair clamped to the counter mocked me. My things were shoved into the shed behind the cabin, damp and smelling of mildew. My armchair was wrapped in a painter's dropcloth, leaning against a lawnmower. I stared at my life scattered in disarray. Cassid's phone call came immediately. "Quinny! Oh my God, I was just thinking about you!" Her voice was champagne and smoke, bright and artificial. "Why are you in my house?" My voice flat, iron. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We were just freshening it up." Looked grim. "We moved your things to storage." Her cheerfulness was a weapon. "And Thanksgiving, you're coming to the lodge." The whole family. Time to reconnect. The word landed like a punch. Every boundary I had carefully built over 3 years, every hard-earned inch of freedom, was obliterated. I had spent years working 2 jobs, nights immersed in freelance gigs, living as a ghost, barely present to the world, while Elena traveled, married, and prospered with effortless charm. And now, just as I tasted freedom, they descended upon my sanctuary. Mom called next. Lydia Collins, my mother, voice dripping with manufactured fragility. "Elena told me you spoke. Isn't it wonderful about the loan?" She didn't call it a gift. She called it my liberation, but layered in obligation. I hung up, trembling. Then my eyes fell on the smart lock they'd installed. My lease prohibited alterations. They had changed it anyway. I punched in 8 digits, Cassid's birthday. Green beep, click. The deadbolt retracted. My heart pounded. This wasn't just invasion. It was an annexation. Mr. Henderson, the neighbor, watched silently as I stepped back. He explained that Elena's husband, Lucas Vale, and movers had arrived early, clearing out the house for the new tenant. Me, apparently now an afterthought in my own lease. The pity in Henderson's eyes snapped me into focus. I would not be a victim. Inside, I methodically documented every detail. Time-stamped photos of locks, receipts for paint and materials paid with Elena's card, video walkthroughs narrating the state of my home, 64 photos, multiple angles, notes of paint codes, proof of trespass and conversion. Every step of their audacity cataloged. 6 months earlier, Grandpa Henry had called me to his office. Noah Calder, his attorney, was present. Grandpa didn't hug me or coddle me. He simply asked, "After this is gone, after you are no longer in chains, what will you do differently?" I didn't cry at the moment, but I almost did. 3 years surviving, not living, and here he was, offering the impossible. Freedom without judgment. "Handle the disbursements," he instructed Noah. Just like that, $400,000 gone. Principal and accrued interest, wiped clean. A week later, a lilac envelope arrived with a short note. "Quinn, this is done. I have given you freedom. Freedom is meant for building boundaries, not carrying more baggage. Do not let them turn you into a mule." At first, I thought the secrecy was protection. Now, standing in the painted cabin, it was clear. It was a test. Grandpa Henry had lit a fuse. He wanted to see how I would respond when the predators, Cassid, Mom, Dad, descended. The next morning, I woke stiff and hollow in a sterile hotel room 60 miles from Juniper Valley. The smell of industrial paint and betrayal clung to my coat. I hadn't slept properly in days, not from fear or anxiety. Those were luxuries I couldn't afford. But from the sheer weight of reality pressing down. I didn't go back to the cabin. I went south, back to the city, back to my territory, back to the life I had finally begun reclaiming. I didn't stop at my apartment. That was neutral ground. I went straight to Hion Dynamics Tower, swiping my badge at 6:03 a.m. The building was empty, humming with filtered air. Quiet, controlled. The perfect environment for the next phase. Analysis. I was a compliance lawyer. I had spent 3 years meticulously analyzing risk for corporations. Now it was time to analyze my own. The first call wasn't to the police. It was to Noah Calder, my grandfather's attorney. "Noah," I said, voice low, careful. "Ms. Collins," he answered, as if he'd been waiting. "I was anticipating your call." "They're in the house," I said, teeth gritted. "They were expecting it," he said flatly. "Mr. Whitmore informed the family Monday evening?" He lit a fuse. I felt my blood run cold. "Lit a fuse?" "Yes," he said. "Your sister broke into your leased property, changed the locks, and moved your belongings into a shed." Lucas Vale told the neighbor he was clearing it out for the new tenant. "Did you take photographs?" 64 time-stamped, I said. "Receipts, video walkthroughs, neighbor statements? Excellent. You've established a clear chain of trespass, conversion of property, and potential wrongful eviction. Your lease agreement explicitly prohibits alterations without landlord consent. They are in profound breach." I almost laughed bitterly. "So what do I do? Call the police? File a report?" "Yes," Noah said. "And you could get a restraining order if you wish. But you also received an invitation from Mr. Whitmore for Thursday at 6 p.m., correct?" I nodded, despite him not seeing me. "He prefers these matters contained. A familial theater. Your power is in documentation and silence. Let them talk, let them reveal themselves. Thanksgiving will be the appropriate venue for confrontation." I hung up, my hands trembling, and pulled up a blank document. I would go armed, not with weapons, but with law and clarity. I drafted personal boundaries and stipulations like a legal memo, financial. No co-signing of any loans, leases, or lines of credit for family members. Professional. My name and reputation may not be used for favors, interviews, or leverage. Residential. My residence is inviolable. No uninvited guests. No stays exceeding 48 hours without formal written agreement. Liability. I am not a guarantor, financially or morally, for Elena, Dina, Graham, or Lydia. I printed 2 copies. My phone rang, a formal invitation from Whitmore Estates. Grandfather requested my presence for Thanksgiving dinner, 6 p.m. cocktails, dinner to follow. At the bottom, in italics, this is a private family gathering. We respectfully request all attendees refrain from recording devices, live streaming, or social media capture. Your presence and discretion are appreciated. My lips tightened. He had disarmed Elena before she could broadcast, before she could turn my boundaries into a performance. No cameras meant no filters, no curated narratives. Authenticity demanded by the patriarch. I called Sal Romano, head of security at Whitmore Lodge. 20 years of loyalty to my grandfather, impeccable discretion. Sal, I need internal cameras activated. Dining room grand parlor? Secure server, only Noah, you, and me have access. A pause. Ma'am, Mr. Whitmore requests those be deactivated for family privacy. I understand, I said, voice firm. I have reason to believe I will be compromised. The footage is an impartial record. Sal's voice softened, understanding. Understood, Ms. Collins. The next hours were spent preparing. I reviewed lease agreements, printed copies of documentation, receipts, photos. I rehearsed dialogues, anticipated guilt trips, manipulations, and faux charm. I imagined Elena's fake concern, my mother's watery disapproval, my father's disbelieving sighs. I had a plan, a script for self-preservation. When Wednesday night fell, I drove back to Juniper Valley. The road curled through frost-coated pines. My heart was steady. Cocktails were served, small talk navigated. I observed. Every gesture, every glance, every subtle maneuver catalogued in my mind. This was not a dinner. This was an audition, an exam, a performance orchestrated by Henry Whitmore. And I had studied the script in advance. Dinner was announced. As we moved to the grand dining room, I noted the absence of devices. No phones, no cameras. Elena's micro-expression of irritation flickered. My mother's practiced empathy faltered, her manipulative gaze less effective. At the table, Grandpa Henry sat at the head. His presence, calm and imposing, anchored the room. He caught my eye briefly, a nod of approval, imperceptible but unmistakable. The room shifted, subtly acknowledging authority. As soup was served, Elena leaned toward me, whispering, "Quinny, why so cold?" "Because cold is appropriate," I replied, voice low. "You broke into my home, altered my property, and manipulated my freedom. Cold is entirely appropriate." Her eyes widened, a spark of surprise. Lucas Vale stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. Mom, ever the observer, tilted her head, assessing. Grandfather spoke, voice quiet but commanding. "Quinn, you are here. That is all that is required tonight. Speak only if you wish." Every word landed with weight. I was aware of my own power in silence. They could not manipulate me if I refused the bait. Every smile, every word, every attempt at guilt was catalogued silently. Dessert arrived. I watched Elena reach for a piece of pie, hand trembling slightly. My mother's voice, usually syrupy, hesitated. Dad looked away, uncomfortable. My boundaries had transformed the table into a courtroom of observation. After dinner, Grandpa Henry cleared his throat. "You are all aware of my gift to Quinn. It is complete, irrevocable. Any interference with her freedom is noted, recorded, and will be addressed. Tonight is for conversation, not coercion." Cassett opened her mouth. Closed it, fumbled for words. Mom's eyes darted to Henry, then to me. Silence. The only sound, subtle and human, was my calm breath, steady, measured. Finally, Elena tried again. "Well, we just wanted to celebrate." "You celebrated by erasing me," I said evenly. "By moving my belongings, changing my locks. That is not celebration. That is assertion of control. Respect the boundaries that were set." A pause. The room held its collective breath. Grandpa nodded subtly. Elena's shoulders slumped. She realized finally that my autonomy was no longer negotiable. By the end of the evening, the tension had shifted. My family was aware. Ava Morgan was no longer the ghost of debt, the account number, the passive recipient of generosity and guilt. I was fully present, fully autonomous, and fully prepared. After dessert, I quietly excused myself, leaving a stunned but reflective room behind. The estate was majestic, serene. I stepped outside, night air crisp against my cheeks. I had survived the final exam. I had walked into the trap, cataloged the evidence, asserted my boundaries, and left intact. Grandfather's experiment had worked, not on me, but for me. I had been tested, and I had passed. Freedom had a price: vigilance, preparation, and courage. But now, for the first time in years, I could breathe. I returned to my cabin that night, silent, victorious, and undisturbed. My boxes were still intact, my furniture untouched. The lodge's lessons lingered. Autonomy was sacred, boundaries necessary, and preparation everything. I had finally reclaimed my life, one careful, deliberate step at a time. I sat in my armchair, the soft pine now restored, the cabin mine. The smell of cedar and faint lavender from the wood polish calmed me. My phone remained silent as it should. The emails from work awaited me, but they were inconsequential. For the first time in nearly a decade, I could simply exist. Free. Unburdened. Ava Morgan. Not an account number, not a case file, not a liability, but a person fully present in the world she had worked tirelessly to reclaim. And as I closed my eyes that night, I realized something crucial. Freedom, once earned, was not only about money. It was about space, respect, and the courage to insist upon both. And now, at last, I had all three. I was asking him to go against his primary employer. I was banking on his integrity. The weight of the request pressed down on me like a storm cloud. "That's quite a request, Ms. Quinn," he sighed over the line. "You're expecting heavy weather," I said. "I'm expecting a Category 5. S," he replied, and then, after a pause, "All right, I'll handle it. The system will be live, the archive sealed. Good luck." I hung up, a chill settling in my chest. It wasn't fear, it was armor. A small, cold piece of it locking into place where my doubts had lived for years. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed again. A storm of notifications from the Collins family group chat had erupted, a digital torture chamber I had learned to keep permanently muted. I opened it. Elena had sent a 30-page PDF. "Everyone get excited," the message read. "Dean and I have been working on something huge, and we're finally ready to share. This is what we wanted to get the cabin ready for Quinny. You're going to love this." I clicked the file. My vision tunneled. The first page, a stock photo of a woman laughing during yoga on a mountain, was superimposed over an image of my cabin. My cabin, photoshopped, logo slapped on the door. I scrolled. My hands shook. It was a business plan. A pitch deck. A high-end luxury retreat. My sanctuary, my quiet cabin in Juniper Valley, had been transformed into a bullet point, a projected revenue line, an asset to be monetized. Mom Lydia was the first to comment. "Oh, darling, that looks so professional." Ro Ellison's voice chimed in. "It sounds so expensive." Elena's eyes gleamed as she typed. "That's the point, Mom. We're tapping into the luxury wellness market. Juniper Cabin is the alpha site. Our proof of concept. And then, franchise Dane Rowe. Multi-million-dollar idea. Just need that seed. Grandpa Henry at Thanksgiving." My breath caught. They hadn't just invaded my house. They had turned my life into a line item in a PowerPoint deck designed to extract money from the man who had just freed me. Elena leaned closer through the screen of my phone, practically buzzing with excitement. "Quinny, you're seeing this? It's our big break. You're the one who gave me the idea with your stress and burnout." A private text from Noah blinked onto the screen. The group chat, I presume. "Let them reveal themselves. Do not respond. See you Thursday." I closed it. Nothing. Just a cold, humming engine of purpose in my chest. Another message came through. This one from my father, Graham. "Dad, Quinn. Your mother is hysterical. Elena is just trying to build something for her family. Don't be selfish. After everything Henry just did for you, support your sister. Don't embarrass her in front of your grandfather on the holiday. Don't embarrass her, not. She broke the law, not. She trespassed." My role was clear, supporting actress. Not allowed a crisis of my own because the star was having a moment. I didn't reply. The elevator doors opened in my mind. One final text from Henry himself arrived. Just come. I am prepared. That night I stayed in my apartment. 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, the first truly deep sleep in years. The morning of Thanksgiving, I brewed coffee, packed a small overnight bag, and selected my best dark sweater and clean trousers. Then I opened the junk drawer in my kitchen. The gray envelope from Noah Calder's office from 6 months ago. The anonymous heavy-gauge bank card was still intact, the pin still sealed. Henry's note was still clipped in place. For the emergency you know is an emergency. This was the emergency. Not financial, it was structural. A symbol, a proof that I hadn't come back for more, that I was armed and ready. I slipped the envelope into my purse, next to printed copies of my boundary list. I parked in the third bay of Whitmore Lodge garage, usually reserved for a vintage Bentley. Stepping out, the warm air was a sharp contrast to the biting November wind. The lodge was more than a house. 3 stories of river rock and plate glass, cantilevered over a gorge, a fortress of unassailable wealth. Tonight it was a courtroom. Through the side entrance, boots clicking on flagstone, I entered a room steeped in old money scent. Beeswax, leather, roasted turkey, and thyme. The parlor was staged like a theater, oil portraits glaring judgmentally down at us. And there they were. The cast, Mom Lydia, on a damask sofa with untouched white wine, Dad Graham by the bar, talking too loudly. Elena in cashmere, scanning the doorway for me. She landed on me like a projectile. Quinny! Hug, clamp all bone and tension. Aunt Carol lifted her phone for a picture. Elena whispered in my ear. You got the deck, right? Perfect. When DNA presents, back me up. Talk wellness, stress relief. Help me get this capital. Not a question about the cabin. Not an apology. Not an are you okay? Transaction first, family second. Mom intercepted, tears on command. Quinn, you're here! Look at you, relieved. I stayed flat. My father, my hand on my shoulder, barked compliments, priming me. I was no longer poor Quinn. I was leverage. Grandpa Henry emerged, simple cardigan, thin, tall. Eyes like ice chips. Surveyed the room, staged tears, awkward postures, vibrating anticipation. Then me. Quinn, pale blue eyes, unblinking, analytical. Dinner, he announced. The dining room table. Cavernous, normally for 30, was set for 7. Me, Grandpa, Mom, Dad, Elena, Dina, Aunt Carol. Noah Calder absent. A family trial, soup barely touched, Lucas Vale started. Grandpa, before the main course, Elena and I want to present the future. Time-sensitive, market exploding, Henry sighed. Very well. 10 minutes, he clicked. Roe Ellison Wellness Retreats. Transformation, not vacation. Pioneer location, Juniper Valley experience, my stomach. Elena laughed. Don't be so literal. Startup culture, aggressive. Did you file permits under my name? Temporarily, she said. We'd change it after funding. We're family? I didn't speak. Dad barked. Enough. You're upsetting your sister. This isn't support, I said. It's theft, Elena cried. Dean flushed. Dad pointed. Apologize. A click. Henry snapped a pocket watch shut. First 8. Marcus, the butler, placed 6 cream-colored envelopes at the table. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Cold. Henry's gaze icy. Quinn, please. Open your envelope. Read it to the family. I slid the nail under the wax. Crack. Tier. 3 documents. Cashier receipts from my private lenders. Stamped paid in full. Henry's letter. Freedom is for building boundaries. Not carrying baggage. My typed boundary list, signed by Noah Calder and Henry Whitmore. I looked at Grandpa. He had certified my defense from afar. Elena. Henry gestured to her envelope. Her turn. Shock. Color drained. Real tears. Fraud exposed. Encrumpled a text he had sent. Just get Quinn to sign. Henry's voice mild. Cutting. You tried to chain her to your fraud. The room? Tense. Cold. Surgical. Elena shrieked. accusing me of being the favorite. I corrected numbers. 400,000, not 500,000. She railed about family legacy. I pointed out the simple truth. The locksmith. The cabin was cleared. Not just optimized, they were erasing me. Deanne exploded. Threats, desperation. But Henry had orchestrated everything. The evidence undeniable. Marcus pressed the tablet. Invoice from Juniper Valley Lock Key. Deanne's signature undeniable. Proof. The illusion shattered. Wind shrieked through the gorge. The first part ends here. At the breaking point, the family confrontation escalated. Truths laid bare. The storm, both outside and inside, fully ignited. The dining room had transformed into a theater of judgment. Elena's shrill accusations echoed off the high ceiling, bouncing between the portraits of stern ancestors who had never known debt, failure, or compromise. Her voice had become a weapon, aimed at me, at the cold, immovable line I had drawn around my life. "You love this, don't you, Quinn?" she hissed. Mascara streaked across her cheeks. Her finger trembled as it pointed at me. "You always were the favorite. The special one, the smart one, the one Grandpa waved magic at." I remained silent. Her voice rising became almost unbearable. But I had prepared for this. I had rehearsed calm, a cold steel beneath my skin. I let her words roll over me like a tide, knowing that any reaction could be used against me in this room of sharks. "It's 400,000, I corrected, my voice quiet but cutting. "Shut up," she shrieked, slapping the table. The fraudulent contribution agreement slid toward me, a cruel reminder of her ambition, her entitlement. She had tried to turn my world into hers, and now the lies, carefully constructed, were crumbling in front of her. Henry remained seated, watching, eyes cold and analytical. He did not intervene, yet. His silence was a sword, suspended above the table, making every word, every lie, every half-truth hang with lethal weight. Mom tried again, softer this time. "Quinn, she was just excited." She painted the cabin. "She changed the locks," I said, my voice steady, threw my belongings into a shed. "That isn't excitement. That's theft." Dad's voice, rough and defeated, cut in. "Quinn, she's your sister. This is all she has. It's just a cabin. Temporary. It's my cabin," I said. My words, low and measured, landed like stones. "Temporary stay?" They weren't staying. They were erasing me. Dean erupted, his chair screeching against the hardwood. "Fine, we don't need this. We don't need this circus. Pull our share, Henry. Go ahead." A heavy silence fell. Even the wind outside, previously quiet, roared against the glass walls of the lodge, as if nature itself had been holding its breath. Henry finally spoke, his voice soft, slicing through the tension. "Share? What share?" Dean froze, realizing the enormity of his mistake. His bluff had collapsed. He had assumed leverage where there was none. Elena's face went pale, the reality of exposure settling like a stone in her stomach. "You assumed," Henry continued, the syllable deliberate, "because I rescued my granddaughter from debt, you assumed I would finance a fantasy to cover your mistakes." "It is not a fantasy," Elena shrieked. "We have investors. Family support. We have a plan." Henry's eyes flicked to her, calm, cutting. "You used my name to solicit money from my family for a joint project I knew nothing about. You leveraged my gift to Quinn as collateral to chain everyone else to your fraud. You didn't just steal from her. You tried to steal from me." Her hyperventilation punctuated the air. My father looked sick. I sat, my expression neutral, my evidence at my fingertips, the boundary list. The photos of the shed, the invoices, the logs, everything. "Quinn, she's your sister," my father repeated, helpless. "Dini, you apologized to my sister for the paint. And Quinn, you let them use the cabin?" Dad pressed. I didn't reply immediately. The silence stretched. The room seemed suspended in a vacuum. I finally spoke, my voice quiet, deliberate. "A temporary stay? Look at these photos." I placed my phone on the table. The screen displayed the chintz fabric of my grandmother's armchair, water-stained and shoved against the rusted lawnmower. Boxes marked fragile, sagging under moisture, my winter coat tossed on oily rags. This temporary stay began before any offer was made, I said. They weren't optimizing the cabin, they were clearing me out. Dean, red-faced and cornered, shouted, "It was a mistake." A total accident. The locksmith? I asked, voice rising. Yes, a terrible idiot. But the instructions were deliberate, and they executed them perfectly. That's not an accident, that's intent. Marcus, the butler, stepped forward, his silver tray now holding a tablet. He presented it to the table, the screen displaying the Juniper Valley lock key invoice. One service call, 2 p.m., Tuesday, November 21st. Remove existing analog deadbolt. Replace with client-provided Haven Smart Lock. Install new code 0814. Authorization e-signature, Lucas Vale. The screen enlarged Dean's signature. The lie, petty and profound, evaporated into the cold air. Elena began to sob. Not the calculated tears from earlier, but real, desperate tears. The illusion of warmth and family unity had shattered. The wind outside slammed the windows violently, a herald of chaos. Elena's cries shifted, the rage and entitlement of a spoiled heiress bubbling up into something more primal. You always get everything. You always get the freedom, the debt erased, the privileges. 400,000, not 500,000, I reminded her calmly. Accuracy mattered. She ranted about family business, legacy, her right to build something, and how unfair it was that I received freedom while she had to struggle. Family business? I repeated, each word precise. You tried to steal my property, use my name, file an LLC without consent. For 3 years, you never asked if I was okay. I kept logs. You sent exactly 2 messages, once to co-sign a car, once to get a cousin an internship. That's it. You weren't checking in. You were taking. Mom slammed her hand on the table, pleading, "Enough! We need unity!" Grandpa wanted us to be together. Reuniting is not co-ownership, I said, my tone cold, iron-edged. You can't use the word family to excuse grand larceny. Dad attempted negotiation. It's just a misunderstanding. Let them stay temporarily. Winter. Base of operations. Temporary stay? I repeated, calm but dangerous. I opened my gallery, swiping through photos of damp, ruined belongings. They weren't staying. They were erasing me. Dean erupted again, shoving his chair back. Fine, pull our share. We don't need this plan. Henry finally intervened, voice calm, deliberate. Share? What share? Who told you such a fund exists? Dean's face crumbled. Elena's color drained further. Their assumptions, their greed, their audacity, had been unmasked. Henry raised his hand slightly. Marcus pressed a button. A wall panel slid open, revealing a massive recessed screen. An email from Elena, addressed to 40 family members, filled the screen. Incredible news. Grandpa Henry is providing seed capital. Flagship property. We're opening a friends and family round of funding. Love, Cass, and Dean. You used my name, Henry said flatly, to solicit money for a project I knew nothing about. You leveraged my gift to Quinn as collateral. You tried to steal from me. Elena shook her head, whispering, No, 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 while my father looked ready to be sick. I remained still, the calm eye in the storm. The room had transformed from dinner into a courtroom, the table a witness stand. My evidence was meticulous, my proof irrefutable. I had been patient, prepared, and observant. And now the final judgment was arriving. Henry's eyes scanned the table. He had orchestrated this entire exposure, every lie laid bare, every assumption dismantled. Silence was absolute. Footsteps approached, measured and confident, breaking the tension. The door to his study opened. A figure emerged, Noah Calder, my grandfather's personal attorney, the man who had orchestrated my freedom. Tall, impeccably dressed, silver at the temples, briefcase in hand. Good evening, he said, scanning the room, calm and precise. I am here as independent counsel to the Whitmore estate. Every eye snapped to him. The trap had not just been set, it had been armored with legal authority. The chaotic Thanksgiving dinner was now a deposition, a courtroom, a reckoning. Noah Calder's presence changed the atmosphere instantly. The room, heavy with betrayal and accusation, shifted into something sharp, precise, and dangerous. He didn't speak loudly. He didn't need to. Every step he took, every glance carried authority. He set his leather briefcase on the table with a soft, deliberate thud. The room held its collective. Noah opened his briefcase. A neatly organized stack of documents emerged. Copies of contracts, invoices, emails, texts, and evidence of financial transfers. The physical weight of the documents made the room feel colder, more judicial. He placed one set in front of each person. "We will begin with the Roe Ellison Wellness Retreats Plan," Noah said. "Specifically, the use of Ms. Collins's property and personal identity without consent." Elena gasped. "Dnepalet." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Dad leaned forward, a worried frown carving his face. I, however, remained calm, a silent observer armed with evidence, ready to let the facts speak. "Ms. Collins, if you would please," Noah continued, nodding to me. "Present your evidence regarding the unauthorized use of your property and name." I placed my envelope, my photos, and the boundary list on the table, organized and methodical. The weight of documentation alone was enough to make even the most confident liar tremble. "This," I said, tapping a photo of the water-stained armchair, "is my property after Elena and Dina's unauthorized optimization. These boxes, my belongings, thrown into a shed. Locks changed without consent. Emails sent using my name to solicit funds. This is proof of intent to erase and appropriate my assets. And it began before any temporary stay was proposed." Noah leaned forward, scanning the materials. He nodded slightly. "Excellent. That is clear and incontrovertible. Let us now examine the financial communications and legal documents sent to your family. Everyone please look at these." He pressed a button on a small tablet, projecting the emails onto the recessed television. Elena's cheerful, presumptuous message soliciting family investment appeared in massive letters across the screen. "Grandpa is providing seed capital. Friends and family round. We're all in this together. You used Ms. Collins's freedom, gifted by her grandfather, as collateral for your venture," Noah said flatly. "A personal gift was leveraged to facilitate a fraudulent business operation. And you assumed no oversight would catch it. That assumption, Ms. Ellison, is now proven wrong." Elena began to cry, but now the tears were raw and uncalculated, mingling panic, rage, and fear. Dean tried to interject, but Noah raised a hand. Silence fell again, absolute and commanding. "Now," Noah continued, "let us consider intent. You both knew that the property and identity you utilized belonged legally and morally to Ms. Collins. You intentionally misrepresented ownership to potential investors. This constitutes fraud, misrepresentation, and breach of trust within a family fiduciary context." Dad's jaw dropped. Mom's trembling escalated. Even Aunt Carol, who had tried to remain neutral, sat rigid, her phone forgotten at her side. "Lucas Vale," Noah said, turning his piercing gaze to him. "Your attempt to falsify authorization by mis-signing for property and instruction on the cabin locks. This is a deliberate misrepresentation." Dean's face flushed a deep purple. He stammered, It was just a violation," Noah cut him off, calm but absolute. "And that, Deanie, will be officially noted." "Elena," he continued, "by sending emails soliciting funds using Ms. Collins's name and leveraging her property, you have created a clear legal obligation. You attempted to coerce family compliance through false representation. That is fraud." Her sobs escalated. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. Noah did not raise his hand or voice. His presence alone was sufficient to control the room. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins," Noah turned to my parents, "your attempts to mediate by suggesting temporary compromise are noted. However, encouraging or accepting unauthorized use of property or identity is legally and ethically dangerous. The proper course in this case is for Ms. Collins' ownership and consent to be respected fully." Mom whispered, "But we just wanted family unity." "Unity is not co-ownership, Mrs. Collins," Noah said firmly. "You cannot mask violations of law with sentimental language. Ms. Collins' boundaries, her property, and her agency must be the central consideration. I felt a strange clarity, a sense of finality. Every lie, every manipulative act, every attempt to rewrite reality in favor of Elena and Dean had been exposed. I had my boundaries, my proof, my calm, and now Noah's authority amplified my voice without me having to raise it further. The conclusion, Noah said, addressing the table, is clear. Ms. Collins retains full ownership and control of her property, her identity, and her personal decisions. Any use of these assets by Ms. Ellison, Lucas Vale, or any other party without explicit, documented consent constitutes legal violation and potential criminal liability. Elena crumpled forward in her chair. Neslocht? My mother and father looked at each other, stunned, unable to intervene. Henry Whitmore remained seated, his eyes quiet, almost approving, watching the outcome of his orchestrated revelation. Ms. Collins, Noah continued, you are free to determine the terms under which any interaction with your family occurs, financially, socially, or personally. Your boundaries are enforceable, and your agency is protected. A wave of relief passed through me, but it was muted. This was not a victory and celebration. It was validation, acknowledgement, and protection of what was mine. My freedom, once abstract, now had structure, legal weight, and authority behind it. Now, Noah said, we will address restitution. Any assets removed, damaged, or misappropriated must be restored. Any communications involving coercion, fraud, or misrepresentation must be documented, with acknowledgement from involved parties. Elena began to sob uncontrollably. Dean muttered, it was supposed to be temporary. Intent does not excuse action, Noah said. Your temporary assumption violated law and trust. Full restitution and acknowledgement are required. Henry finally spoke, his tone low and precise. Quinn, you have been given freedom not just to survive, but to assert boundaries. Tonight the experiment concludes. Let the record show that you acted with integrity, clarity, and preparation. The rest of the family will now be observed for compliance with your wishes. I exhaled, the tension in my body dissolving gradually. The storm had passed, though its echoes lingered. The cabin, my property, my life, and my identity were secure, not because of confrontation alone, but because I had prepared, documented, and acted deliberately. I had asserted my agency, and it had been recognized legally and morally. Elena's crying subsided into shaky gasps. Dean remained slumped, silent, red-faced, a man stripped of his assumed power. My parents absorbed the enormity of the lesson, the sharp truth that sentiment could not overwrite law or ethics. I reached into my purse, feeling the weight of the sealed envelope from Henry, the symbolic gift of freedom 6 months ago. I no longer needed it as a reminder. I had proven that I could defend myself. But the envelope, unopened, remained a talisman, proof that the freedom I had been granted was mine to wield responsibly. Noah gathered his documents. Ms. Collins, you now have independent authority. The estate recognizes your boundaries. I suggest all parties adhere to them, lest legal action be necessary. He closed his briefcase. The sound echoed like a gavel. The family sat, silent, absorbing the clarity and finality of the judgment. I stood. The weight in the room lifted. This was no longer a Thanksgiving dinner. This was an assertion of sovereignty. My sovereignty. Henry gave a subtle nod, almost imperceptible. My grandfather's way of saying, well done. My freedom, tested by manipulation, greed, and betrayal, had been affirmed. Elena wiped her face, defeated but still defiant in smaller ways. Din slumped, muttering apologies to no one in particular. My parents, humbled, finally understood that their attempts at family cohesion could not come at the cost of my autonomy. And for the first time in years, I felt entirely unchained. Not just from debt, not just from expectation, but from the manipulation that had long sought to define me. My boundaries were not negotiable. My life was my own. The turkey could wait. The wine could wait. Tonight, the only thing that mattered was clarity, justice, and freedom. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled. He placed his leather briefcase on the gleaming sideboard next to Dean's now dark laptop and clicked the latches. The sound was sharp, judicial. "Mr. Whitmore is correct," Noah said, his calm baritone cutting through the high-pitched hysteria in the room. "We are here to establish facts, not assign blame." He pulled out a document bound in a simple blue cover. "This declaration was drafted by Ms. Collins herself and submitted to my office. It has now been formalized." I recognized my own words, the personal boundaries and stipulations I had typed in the pre-dawn hours at Hion. Noah had transformed my desperate memo into a weapon. "This document," he continued, "is now a formal addendum to the Whitmore Estate's guiding principles. I will read the 2 key clauses." His eyes locked on Deanie, who looked ready to collapse. Clause 1. No member of the Collins or Rowe families shall, under any circumstances, use the name, reputation, or financial standing of Ava Morgan or Henry C. Whitmore for any commercial venture, solicitation, or application for credit without explicit notarized consent from both parties. He paused. Clause 2. A financial gift from one family member to another is a private transaction. It does not constitute a family fund, imply a future obligation, or create a shared asset pool. Once given, the gift is the exclusive property of the recipient. To suggest otherwise is both illogical and potentially illegal. He closed the document. In short, Ms. Collins's assets are her own. Your attempts to leverage them, Dee and Elena, were based on a profound misunderstanding. "This is a joke," Elena stammered, eyes darting between Noah and my grandfather. "This is a private family matter. You're our lawyer." "You can't—" "No," Henry said, flat and final. He rose, his tall frame casting a long shadow. "We are in my private home. There is nowhere more private. We are done with secrets. Done with whispers. Done with meetings in dark corners. We will have this conversation in the light." He gave a small nod to Marcus, who stepped forward holding a small black USB drive. Without handing it to Henry, Marcus plugged it into the discreet port on the wall. "You said your solicitation email was just enthusiasm, a brainstorming exercise?" Henry said casually. "This arrived this morning from your second cousin in Seattle, who was concerned about your use of my name." Marcus pressed a button. The room filled with a recording, static-laced but unmistakable, Elena and Deene's voices plotting. Deene bragged, "He actually did it. Paid the whole thing. 400,000, just gone." Elena responded with cold calculation. "Of course he did. He's primed. We leverage it. We tell the family he's opening the coffers, and we are the first new project. Perfect timing. Quinn will be grateful." The audio ended, leaving a suffocating silence. My mother looked struck. My father stared at the floor. Elena whispered, "We were just brainstorming." "You can't use that. It's illegal." "Noah!" Dean shouted, pointing. "That's inadmissible. I'll sue." Noah didn't blink. "Recorded in Washington, a one-party consent state. Your cousin, also a lawyer, forwarded this to the state attorney general. Elder financial abuse and wire fraud, flagged as a precaution." The words attorney general and wire fraud sucked the air from the room. All eyes turned to me. I was the burden, the drama. I felt the weight of their hatred. Slowly, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small, thick gray envelope. The emergency bank card Grandpa Henry had sent me 6 months ago. I placed it on the table, atop the printed email. For 3 years, I worked 2 jobs, reviewed contracts until 3 a.m., ate stale bagels, drank cold coffee. I never asked him for more money. I never touched this. I met my grandfather's eyes. His severe expression softened, then broke into a real smile, full of pride. Noah seized the moment. He opened his briefcase again. "One last item," he said, producing papers and a pen. "This is a simple agreement, a path forward, a commitment to familial respect. Boundaries are clear. No trespassing on property, no use of names for commercial purposes. Gifts are gifts, not obligations." He placed the pen next to my sealed envelope. My parents froze. Signing would admit guilt. refusing everything else. Dean snorted. This is a kangaroo court. I am not signing. Elena pushed the paper away like it was poison. You've humiliated me, Quinn. No, I said, standing firm. I don't need a signed document. Just one word, no. From this moment forward, no using my name, no entering my house, no interference, for as long as we live. The word hung in the air. Final. The swinging kitchen door opened with a soft swoosh. Marcus stood there, impassive, and behind him, a cloud of cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and roasted pumpkin, Thanksgiving pies. The warm, normal smell collided with the cold tension of the room. We ate in silence. Only silver scraped on porcelain. My mother tried to speak of the weather. My father stared at his plate. Elena and Deanie refused food, two statues of resentment. Noah quietly called, Henry, that was magnificent. The execution was stayed. Guests were dismissed. My parents fled, half dragging each other. Elena and Deanie simply vanished, leaving uneaten pie behind. I sat in the guest suite overlooking the Black River when the digital attack began. My phone buzzed. Aunt Carol had tagged me in a post on social media. The photo was perfectly nostalgic. The caption, a passive-aggressive masterpiece. Thankful for moments like this. Family puts aside differences. Life is short. Pride is long. Comments from 40 others flooded in, praising Elena as a saint, implying I was ungrateful. I felt my old rage rise, but I remembered Noah's advice. Do not engage. Let them reveal themselves. They had failed physically. Now they were retreating digitally. I opened my laptop, drafted a concise one-page email to the list. 3 points. Boundaries. My finances are private and not up for negotiation. The truth. The reunion was an intervention, revealing my sister and brother-in-law's attempts to leverage my name for profit. Gratitude. I honor my grandfather's gift by living honestly and independently. I signed simply, Ava Morgan. Cold, precise, the truth delivered in one strike. I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply from Noah. Surgical. Well done. The next morning, the social media storm had collapsed. Noah had posted on Calder Associates' blog a legal explanation of gifts versus family investments, elder financial abuse, wire fraud, and trespass. No names mentioned. He validated my story to the public without revealing the family's identity. The narrative was broken. I was checking out of the lodge when Elena texted. Gone was her fake bubbly persona. Quinn, you ruined us. Investors backed out. You humiliated us. I didn't reply. Then another text. Fine. You want to be a lawyer? Let's be lawyers. The wellness retreat idea is still worth millions. You sit on the flagship. You win. What's your price? I stopped in the driveway, cold wind biting. After everything, recordings, legal threats, she still tried to buy my name. She saw family as transaction. I drafted a licensing agreement. $1 fee, my name and property use for commercial purposes, at-will termination. I sent it. She replied, go to hell. She didn't want a contract. She wanted leverage. I drove down the long driveway, hands steady, solid for the first time, controlling the narrative. I parked under the massive gates of the lodge, the cold wind whistling past. My phone rang. It was Noah. Still on the property? He said flatly. My father's text had warned me. Henry wanted everyone in the study after dessert for a sealed letter. This is the real reading, the main event, Noah continued. S is on standby just outside the study door. If anyone raises a hand or voice, they'll be escorted off. Legacy brings unpredictability. Stay near the door, let Henry speak. He always has the last word. I walked into the study, my hands steady, the $1 contract tucked into my pocket. The dining room, still heavy with the memory of the argument, had been abandoned. The study was different. 90% books, 10% leather and wood. A fire burned in the hearth but offered no warmth. Marcus had set a small dessert table, pecan pie, coffee, a grotesque parody of the ruined dinner, a restaging. My parents sat stiffly on a leather sofa, pale and distant. Nia and Elena stood by the door, coat-clad, cornered. Noah stood by the fireplace, briefcase on the mantel. The security head was visible outside the door. Henry waited behind his massive oak desk, eyes piercing, silent, commanding. When I entered, he nodded. The room was tense, every breath measured. Henry picked up a sealed envelope from his desk. "This," he began, "is for all of us. Read it carefully. No interruptions." The words themselves carried authority. He handed it to me first. I felt the weight of it in my hands, the anticipation of closure. I opened it slowly. Inside, a single typewritten page bore my grandfather's meticulous handwriting. It read, in essence, recognition, trust, and boundaries. Every point that had been argued over, the misappropriation of my name, the failed schemes, the personal boundaries, was affirmed. He acknowledged my diligence, my independence, my integrity. The letter was formal but full of warmth, pride, and protection. As I read aloud, my family sat frozen. My parents avoided eye contact, their expressions a mixture of relief and shame. Dean and Elena shifted uncomfortably, caught fully in their exposure. Every calculated move they had made, every attempt to manipulate and leverage, was formally nullified by my grandfather's words. His voice echoed in the room through the written page, a declaration that the estate, the gifts, and the trust I had earned were entirely mine. I handed the letter to Noah, who scanned it and nodded subtly. "Clear, precise, no ambiguity," he said. Henry then spoke directly, his tone deliberate. "From this moment forward, respect these boundaries. This household, this family, operates on trust, honesty, and accountability. Anything outside of that will not be tolerated." His eyes swept across the room, landing on Dine and Elena. "You have been made aware." No one moved. Dee's jaw tightened. Elena's lips trembled. Even my parents seemed relieved yet chastened, the weight of reality settling in. Noah quietly reminded them of the legal ramifications, elder financial protections, and personal liabilities. The air in the room shifted, the last vestiges of rebellion and defiance drained away. With the formalities concluded, the pies were served. Marcus discreetly passed plates. My parents nibbled quietly. Dean and Elena, still standing, didn't touch a thing. The silence was thick, broken only by the gentle scrape of forks on porcelain. It was grotesquely normal, domestic even, after the storm that had just passed. Later, my phone buzzed again. A private message from Elena. The tone had shifted. Gone was the manipulative, bubbly persona. Only raw panic remained. "Quinn, you ruined us. Investors backed out. Family is calling. You humiliated us, all because of a cabin." I didn't reply. She texted again. "Fine. You want to be a lawyer? Let's be lawyers. Wellness retreat idea is still worth millions. You sit on the flagship? You win. What's your price?" I paused in the driveway, the gravel crunching under my feet. The cold wind bit, but I didn't flinch. She still saw everything as a transaction, even after exposure and legal threats. Family became business. Manipulation became negotiation. I opened my laptop, tethered to my phone, and drafted a licensing agreement. Licensor Ava Morgan. Licensee Lency Elena Ellison Rowe. Terms: use of the Juniper Valley cabin and my name for commercial purposes. Fee: $1. Crucial clause: termination at will, effective immediately, for any reason or no reason. I attached the PDF and sent it. My response was simple. Here is your offer. $1 and I can terminate at any time. 3 minutes later, her reply came, "Go to hell." Predictable. She hadn't wanted a contract. She wanted leverage. The $1 fee was an insult. The at-will clause was a death sentence. She could build her $1 million brand, but I held ultimate control, an ironic reversal of all her schemes. I started down the driveway, hands steady on the wheel. For the first time in memory, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. Controlling the narrative. I had taken the rhythm. The power was mine. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Dad needs you back." "Henry wants everyone in the study for one last reading." I laughed quietly. After the ruined dinner and the pies, he was restaging the finale. I parked under the lodge gates, feeling the wind whip past, and dialed Noah. "I'm back," I said. "Good," he said. "This is the real reading. Sis on standby. Legacy brings unpredictability. Let Henry speak. He always has the last word." I walked back inside. The study was warm in its wood and leather familiarity, yet charged with expectation. My parents sat pale, stiff, distant. Dean and Elena, cornered and coat-clad, refused to sit. Noah and Marcus positioned themselves, alert but unobtrusive. Henry waited behind his desk, the calm epicenter of control. I approached. His nod acknowledged my presence, the quiet approval of one who trusted his heir. Everything that had come before, the confrontations, the recordings, the legal maneuvers, the social media attacks, had led to this moment. I was not only standing, I was resolute. The room, the house, the family, it was mine to navigate, and for the first time I felt solid, anchored, and in command. This was the endgame. The seals were broken, the truths were out, the boundaries were clear. And I was the one who had survived it all. Got it. I can compress and restructure your text into 2 parts totaling 3,000 words, keeping all the key emotional beats, legal drama, and resolution intact. I'll retain the tension, the letters, the inheritance, Elena's final choices, and the final sense of freedom and agency for Quinn. Here's the first draft broken into Part 1 and Part 2. Sit. Quinn. I took the chair opposite him, the one reserved for CEOs, senators, the one that faced the patriarch. Henry's voice was dry, crisp as the old paper in his study. Before dessert, he reached into his desk drawer and produced a stack of envelopes. These were thick, 9x12 vellum, sealed with heavy red wax. He slid one to me, nodded to Noah for my parents, and finally to Elena and Deanie. "This," he said, "is the postscript, the clarification. We have had the illumination. Now we have the terms." He looked at me. "Quinn, as you were the catalyst, you may go first." My hands trembled. I broke the wax seal and unfolded a single heavy card. My voice echoed in the silent wood-paneled room as I read aloud, "To my granddaughter, Ava Morgan. For 3 years, you have displayed integrity and self-reliance under burdens that would have broken lesser people. At Thanksgiving, you were tested. You used the freedom I gave you not as a cushion, but as a weapon to protect your own soul. You did not fail me." Tears stung my eyes. I looked at my parents. Their faces were a mixture of fear and envy. I cleared my throat. "Therefore, upon my death or at a time of my choosing, I give and bequeath to you, Ava Morgan, and to your heirs forever the full title deed and ownership of the Whitmore Lodge, its grounds, and all assets contained therein." A strangled gasp escaped my mother. Elena's voice was sharp. "What?" I read the condition. Ava Morgan must not financially, legally, or professionally assume the debt, liability, or co-sign on behalf of any Collins or Rowe family member for 12 consecutive months. The lodge was mine, but only if I protected it from the very family that threatened to steal it. It wasn't a gift. It was a fortress, a final, brilliant legal shield. Next, my parents opened their envelope. Noah Calder explained. A non-transferable retirement stipend, a sum sufficient for their needs, theirs alone, untouchable by Elena's ambitions. Henry had severed their finances from her reach, ensuring she could never use their home or family emergency to manipulate me. Finally, Elena opened hers. Her face twisted with fury and disbelief. The envelope contained an invitation to the Whitmore Quinn Scholarship Fund, a non-voting voluntary position to help plan awards and read applications. No compensation, no inheritance. Her voice trembled with outrage. He pays her $500,000 mistake. He gives her the lodge. He gives them a retirement, and I get a name tag and a chicken dinner? Grandpa, what about my share? Henry's voice softened, impossibly sad. Your share, Elena, is the chance to fix yourself, to show the family and yourself that you can be part of something without trying to own it. That is all. A clean path, Dean sneered, but Noah Calder stepped forward. You are not an heir. You are not a Whitmore. You are a guest. Remain silent. Elena's tears were hot and real. She accused me, you did this. You came in here with your boundaries and your truth. You're a usurper. I walked to her, hands raised. He didn't leave you with nothing. That invitation, I said, pointing to the crumpled letter, is a way back. A clean path. You said you wanted to build something. Build this with me. Stand on a stage and give a kid a chance. No fraud, no angles, just help. I offered my hand, not in friendship, but in truce. For a fleeting second, I saw the sister I had known before envy and ambition consumed her. Then her mask returned. I don't want your charity, she hissed. She threw the invitation at my chest. You can have him. You can have this mausoleum. She grabbed Dine and left. Henry's voice, cold and firm, stopped her. One last thing. Marcus, the projector. The screen lit up with security footage from the Whitmore Lodge gate. Elena, 2 days ago, personally ordered a locksmith to change the cabin locks with her own code. The truth was exposed. Dean had not erred. Elena had orchestrated the invasion. Her face, once fiery, became hollow and empty. Henry approached Elena's betrayal with love, heartbreak, and finality. Elena, he said quietly, I have loved you since the moment you were born. I still love you. But love is not a blank check. It is not permission. It is not a shield to hurt others. And love never accepts violation. You violated this family? You violated your sister and me. That I cannot abide. Noah Calder stepped forward, a single sheet of paper in hand. A cessation and interference agreement. Elena and Dean must cease all contact or interference with me, my businesses, the Whitmore or Collins names, and Juniper Valley property. Sign it, or face civil action at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Elena looked around the room, her last allies gone. She glanced at me. I spoke softly, with all the weight of the lodge and my inheritance behind me. I don't want to sue you. I don't want revenge. I just want peace. Sign it, and we can all finally go home. She hesitated, then signed. Dean followed silently. No glance, no apology. They left. I was left with my grandfather and Noah. Henry handed me the original heavy iron key to the lodge. This is not a reward. It is a responsibility. You are the steward, not the owner, of memories and kindness here. I took the key. I will. My parents, ashamed but understanding, left. The snow began to fall. I stood alone in the study, watching the flakes cover the tracks of their departure. Noah filed the papers and left. It was just me, the fire, the clock, and the quiet authority of the lodge. I retrieved the gray emergency envelope from my purse, a bank card I had never needed. I broke it in half and threw it into the fire. My freedom had never been contingent on money. It had been a test of judgment, self-reliance, and boundaries. Months later, the Whitmore Quinn Scholarship Fund announced its first recipient, a third-year law student, a single mother working 3 jobs to pay tuition. I read her application myself. Then an email arrived from Elena. No demands, no angles. Just, I'm available if you still need me. Cass. I typed one word back. Yes. On the porch of Juniper Valley Lodge, smelling the pines and feeling the lodge's weight in my desk drawer, I understood Henry's gift. Not the money, not even the lodge. It was the knowledge that freedom is a boundary, and a boundary defended is how a family can truly grow. That Thanksgiving had broken us all, but it had also set me free.